All right, so we're pumped. I want you to get mad. What do we do? What do we want, I guess is really the first question, right? Like it's the everything problem. Everything around us is broken. Where do we start, right? If we think about it with a private sector mentality, like what's the strategy? What are the questions we ask? What are the goals? What are the KPIs of the movement, if you will? And so the important thing to do next is to organize, right? Is to have that conversation with people in your community who are also not happy with the way things are, and thinking about what are we for, and more importantly, what are we against? So in this block, the class war rock block, are some punk rock favorites of ours. No commercials. No commercials, because we're not trying to sell cheeseburgers after a song.
If that doesn't get us a radio show, nothing will.
Clear channel. Do They Owe Us a Living by Crass, into Eat the Rich by Motörhead, into Fearless Vampire Killers from the Bad Brain self-titled, into Nazi Punks Fuck Off. Love. I'm not even going to say the name of the next one, but it's about a flag, and it's by Propagandhi. You're welcome to say it when we get into it.
Stick the fucking flag up your goddamn ass, you son of a bitch. I picked it on purpose.
Nuance. The E.E. Cummings poem of punk rock. And then into Refuse Resist by Sepultura.
You made the nuance joke, but like the whole reason this block is great is because we currently don't need it in the organization portion of this. Like, okay, we let our heroes die in the last block. We know that now the only reality that we need to try to accept is the one that we're actually experiencing. Take the framing off. And to me, that's why Do They Owe Us a Living by Crass is on here. The whole, one of the main lines in here is fuck the politically minded. Here's something I want to say about the state of the nation and the way they treat us today. And I think it's important to remember, people love to say, I'm not political. And then they also love to say everything is political. Those are saying the same things. I think, but what we can agree on, because everything is political in the sense that everything affects everyone else around us. Every decision you make in community has ripples. But I think what we can more helpfully talk about is I reject the framing of the two-party political system around the needs of human beings. So to me, Do They Owe Us a Living was such a great example. These are just anarchists. The song was written in an anarchist commune. It was designed to just have punk shows in the commune, and then they ended up being able to take off with this song and one other one, basically, and just became an anarchist punk band. And if you're not familiar with anarchy in general...
I don't know what it means, but I love it.
Not diving into it a ton here, but one of the things I think is important to take out of it is we're going to see a couple of examples in this block of anarchists taking positions for and against, sort of like the which side are you on that we've talked about. Sometimes there are inevitably sides. It's not just dichotomies you're setting up. And so the whole chorus of this...
It's more than the only way to live in this world is without rules.
Yeah. So this connected with me, this song did, however long ago it was I first heard it, but do they owe us a living? Of course they do. These are my political beliefs now. I don't need to break down how we conceptualize it. Okay, taking that action is important. It will take time. Large-scale change is nuanced and very difficult. But the question of, does someone deserve to be alive just because they've been brought to life on this planet? Yes, of course they do. It was so much easier just to see it this way.
Why is there a sliding scale for human rights, right?
Yeah.
Why do some people have more of a right to be alive and healthy than other people? How could you politicize that? How can you look at your neighbor or think about a kid your kid goes to school with or whatever and be okay with right? It's not, nah, it's fine. You do your own thing. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You've been sold such a shitty, poisonous bill of goods if you can do anything less than like trying to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. Like saying, of course, you're owed a living doesn't mean I specifically and personally have enough money to where I should be able to give it to you so that you can stay alive. And we should have to share money directly that way. Like the government exists as an organization for us to make our money efficient, to make sure that the people who we don't know who to pay attention to don't get caught below the nets. Like, I just love to kick off this block with this particular song. There's nothing else about it. It's direct. Don't forget, everyone matters, period. It's not a political statement. All people deserve the chance to stay alive. People can do what they want to with it from there, but of course everyone's owed a living.
And then you go into Eat the Rich by Motörhead and you get that classic Lemmy, like I wrote this in 3 minutes. Like, here's the main idea over and over again.
Come on, baby.
Loving an elevator 46 times. But then you go into Fearless Vampire Killers, and there's so much good. Like, we also talked about Band in DC and some other stuff from the Bad Brains record. Like, they are from the DC punk scene with Scream and some of those other great bands. But this one is great because the first verse of it is, the bourgeoisie had better watch out for me. All throughout this so-called nation, we don't want your filthy money. We don't need your innocent bloodshed. We just want to end your world. Like, I love the idea of you saying there doesn't need to be nuance in the organizing. It's like we can clearly point to all roads Kevin Bacon 6 Degrees lead back to inequality.
You know what's right.
Right. It's very extremely common sense. It's stupidly common sense. And the fact that so many people, like, exhibits A through F in this block all say the same thing different ways. At what point do we say, okay, enough is enough? I mean, I guess then we won't get cool songs like Nazi Punks Fuck Off after that. But, I'm willing to live in a world where where the dead Kennedys are a relic of history that we study, and they maybe don't need a statue either. But I think I love the way that this block is organized because, you get the two types of ideological debates that shouldn't be debates, and one is economic and one is social, right? And they're always interrelated, the identity politics and the economic class politics. So the first three, the Crass song, Motörhead, and Bad Brains, are about that economic class struggle. And then the next three, the Kennedys and Propagandhi and Sepultura, are all about the social struggle and classes of people being subjugated and that sort of stuff. So here's a nice fat block of music for you to just absolutely hurl bricks through rich racist people's windows to.
Yep. And a few
Oh my God, does that make us Antifa?
I'm on record as being anti-fascism. Yes. But
shout out to all the Profa people out there.
A few highlights that I think can branch off from this. One of the reasons I love punk is because I only need a minute to then send me on a theological 6-month journey, So like Fearless Vampire Killers from Bad Brains, like this is a pretty light reference to Karl Marx talking about like vampirism inside of capitalism. And so, speaking of all the people that may or may not be on the fence that we have the chance of talking to, hi, don't let people classify anything as Marxist. You don't have to agree with 100% of the reality of everything in everyone's life in order to learn from some of the things that they may have brought up. So like this idea of Karl Marx's critiques of capitalism are safe for your brain to consider. They won't turn you into somebody who doesn't enjoy free enterprise or businesses anymore. It's an easy thing to learn. So like that's where that reference comes from. Going into the Dead Kennedy song, like this is such a great example. You talk about the social aspect of all of this. Look, people seem to get confused about like who should we accept and not accept into the movement. What about virtue signaling? What about cancel culture? Some of these things are nuanced. Other things are like neo-Nazis showing up at a Dead Kennedy show where they went, we know how to handle this. Let's write a song. So they wrote a song that they play at the shows to disinvite the people who are there, fun fact, because apparently Dead Kennedys was using too much satire. And then the neo-Nazis thought, oh, I can get down with that, which is exactly how neo-Nazi shit always starts. ugh.
On Reddit. Punk shows for the Reddit
Satire
of the 80s.
gone awry every single time. But inside of this song, right?
Shout out to the Rick and Morty fans. You're a Szechuan sauce away from becoming a neo-Nazi.
And we say that as people who love Rick and Morty.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But like, I love even inside the song, like, Dead Kennedys are owning the scene, they're owning the community, and they're speaking directly to it. Punk ain't no religious cult. Punk means thinking for yourself. Here are more anarchists. This is not political speech. This is them saying, actually, we disavow all forms of authority. You're still a piece of shit. Get out of the show. Like, this is not hard, right? And they even circle all the way back at the end by saying, we ain't trying to be police. If you ape the cops, it ain't anarchy. They're even saying, if you self-police too hard, you're going against the movement. We reject the people who come here to enact violence and to hurt other people. We reject people who aren't willing to be responsible for themselves, which, if you take out the anarchist language, sounds a whole lot like individualism. And so we can learn a lot from one another. Maybe people we didn't really expect to.
I think the other point that I would make about this block of songs is like, they're all extremely crass.
Yeah.
And there's coarse language and sort of violent ideas. And to your point about like there being a little bit of satire and whatever. When I was growing up, my mom would always say, if I don't yell, you don't listen, right? So this is that.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're pearl clutching and you're more worried about the respectability politics of the whole thing, let that feeling sit with you for a minute, rather than like, I'm more worried about you saying fuck off than there being Nazis that are at the show harming people. Like, whose side are you on?
Yeah.
Really?
Right. And even that direct lack of nuance and just challenge to all the abstractions you set up is why I picked this Propagandhi song. It's not well written or done, honestly, but it was the first Propagandhi record on Fat Records, like one of the only things I can enjoy from Fat Mike during the early 90s, as far as I know. But like, I love it because it just talks about it. It does this really kind of like child parent thing in the way that it tells
directed
the
at
story.
a dad.
Yeah. And, you know, the child is observing things like the Boy Scouts cheering for war and asking his dad, what's up with this? And without having to break it down into some theological framework, like the line that's important here and the reason that the title is so antagonistic is he's like, because if this country is so goddamn free, then I can burn your fucking flag. Like, the point is not everyone should be able to burn a flag. The point is, maybe you should hold up your concept of freedom every now and then, like we talk about, like lift things up and like look under them, especially on the dusty sides that haven't been examined for a bit, and just like pay attention. Like, freedom is not a zero-sum game. Like, there are always things that we want to do and not do, and anytime we take freedom away, the point should be to enhance the freedom that's important. And so, like, a song like this is important for us to keep in mind as we challenge any form of authority, because we have to ask, why do the people in authority only allow us to do certain expressions of ourselves and not others?
I think the fact that we as a country haven't gotten to agreement on, you know, what's rule number one in our country, like the First Amendment, freedom of speech is not freedom from consequence, and especially when that's private or free enterprise or whatever. All of these songs owe a great credit to the existence of the First Amendment, but that's a thing that we're like collectively getting so wrong now and before and forever. And we probably won't be able to move forward until we can sit with that grasp of what freedom really means. Freedom is not like within the narrow conception of what it is. To your point, the revolution will not be televised. Like the left and the right are all right of center over here, and common sense humanity is to the left of all of that. And why? So there's a lot to be said for like freedom, red, white, and blue freedom versus real, actual, like liberated humanity.
Right. And it's not like some Loki in the Avenger shit where he's like, freedom is slavery. Like, no, it's not that. Like, it's neither of those binaries.
Orwell had some good ideas around that.
He did have a few. He wrote them down. And then you threw in a
Ignorance
Sepultura.
is strength.
You threw in a Sepultura so that we could get Max Cavalera's input in here to wrap up this block.
I love a good tribal drum. So like this is the drum circle from Absolute Hell. I don't have a lot to say about it. It's just primal and raw, and the lyrics are not very nuanced. The title of the album, Chaos AD, is from a lyric in this. It's just like, the world is like, we have externalized this concept of war outside of our door, but like what's happening is third world country level warfare being executed on our streets every day. The video, like, I think this is one of the songs on this playlist where like the video is super important because the imagery is so visceral of like tanks rolling down city streets in America. And it really is like, we bring hell home in a way that's not visible to most Americans who have the privilege to not care about any of this stuff. But if you do care and you're here now, you have to refuse this state of being, saying like, this is not a thing, that I flatly reject this as a condition of human existence for the name of public safety or law and order, or, whatever. We say this in Atlanta, is a place that the police budget just got expanded by 20% or whatever.
We're having a hard time here.
Great job, everyone.
But that's, I hadn't really thought of this before, but like that sense of normalizing something horrendous to the point to where it just becomes subtext, like pay attention to when that happens. It's happening right now, where we've recently decided that some amount of people are just going to start dying every day as a result of a preventable pandemic.
That's a literal presidential position.
Yeah.
Right now.
I mean, and like,
deal with it.
and like, we're not really making statements one way or another. We're just literally pointing out what's happening. And we know for a fact that other countries, I mean, how many times in our lives ever are we going to have another experience where everyone in the world has to deal with the same thing that acts the same way? And we watch countries like New Zealand who did exactly what we all know we were supposed to do to contain this thing, and then they went to no cases. And in fact, they went to no cases, and then this is fun, I don't know if you know this, then they accidentally let in 2 cases on an inbound flight, and the person who was in charge of that in the government immediately resigned for failure to do his job. Opposed to
they
here.
get a promotion in Washington.
Right, as opposed to here where we say, dying from things is a fact of life, and we can't really just...
Not my problem, bro. Oh, hey.
But like, it's important to just like, even if we can't do anything to fix it, because honestly, I don't know how other than doing my small part, but like, now's a moment to pay attention to people deciding that something that should be in the foreground should move to the background so that we can get back to making money.
Yep. So all of this looks like, rallying your community around disinviting people that are going to bring hate and fear, and changing policy so that your tax dollars don't get siphoned off for a billionaire's third yacht or whatever. But it's thinking about like, these songs should motivate you and give you a vocabulary for, I hate this.
Yep.
What might it look like instead if we did something else?
Yeah.
So listen and enjoy this next block, and get good and pissed.
All 6 songs will take a total of 1 minute and 17 seconds, and we'll see you back.